Hi, I'm Jason Whitmer, Co-Vice President of the Board of Directors for the ACLU Nebraska, and we'd like to welcome you to our annual meeting 2022.
And I'm Rosie Higgs, Co-Vice President of the ACLU of Nebraska Board of Directors. For over 50 years, the ACLU has been protecting the rights of Nebraskans, and we are excited to celebrate and commemorate another year with you today.
This video stream will be followed by a Zoom conversation with the board and y'all. And if you already got the link, I'm sure you're already on here. And if you need to share with your friends and join us.
As we begin today's virtual event, we first want to acknowledge that we are recording this today from stolen land, the ancestral territory of the Odo-Missouri, Pawnee, Arikara, Kansa, and Omaha peoples, among others. We honor their stewardship of the land by working to end injustices impacting Indigenous Nebraskans today. And we encourage you to research the history of wherever you call home and let what you learn call you to action.
As we all know, it's been a busy time for the ACLU Nebraska. And I want to share that we have several victories. We have come for new challenges, and we love to share that we are in the process of finding a new executive director.
The team has accomplished big things during this time of change. For a brief update on that, we're going to hand it over to Mindy.
Thanks, Jason, and thanks, Rosie, and thank you all for joining us this afternoon. I'm so proud to be a part of the ACLU of Nebraska's team and so proud of the body of work that we've been able to accomplish, not just with the support of our team, but with the support of all of you. And what a year it's been. Stopping a total abortion ban with historic engagement around abortion rights, and honorees here with us today, and achieving a settlement for a young protester who was injured in the 2020 protests. Launching an immigrants' rights awareness campaign, reminding all Nebraskans that all of us have rights and all of us belong. And mailing voting rights information to every county jail in the state. We know the fight's not over. Looking ahead, we see challenges to our voting rights, our reproductive rights, LGBTQ plus community members' rights, particularly trans youth. But we're not done fighting, and we know you're not done either. Thank you for your support, and thank you again for being here today.
Before we get to our honorees, we have to do a little bit of housekeeping. One requirement of our annual meeting is that we share financial information, and we'd like to take this opportunity to remind you that it is your support that makes all of this work possible. We are glad to report that we continue our strong trend of growth. We have a 6-month reserve and an additional strategic reserve that can be deployed rapidly in response to emerging events. Local investment in our work remains strong, and private funders and foundations have continued to fuel our work through general operating support and funding earmarked for our work in gender justice and reproductive freedom, smart justice reforms, LGBTQ plus issues, voting rights, prisoners' rights, and racial justice. Additional information regarding our finances can be found on our website, aclunebraska.org.
Now we'd like to welcome Mitch Davis, our keynote speaker from ACLU National. He brings out the best potential in all ACLU organizations across the state, including us here in Nebraska.
When defining what leadership is, we don't have a dearth of opinions. None of these are right. All of them are right. It depends. Leadership is an act, a way of being. In the moment, authentic, striving, scared, proud, and self-reflective. We step into our leadership when we know ourselves enough to engage in continuous improvement of how we show up, and humility in where our power and authority are sometimes not enough. We thrive in our leadership when we create the conditions for others to surpass us in our skills and abilities, and when we hold boundaries firm that support our ability to work towards achievable goals. Those of us with a positional authority and privilege are responsible to use that power to create the conditions for equity and belonging, and are accountable on how we make decisions and the caliber of those decisions. In the choices we make every day, we are being watched, for consistency, honesty, and clarity. And it's a leader's burden to deal with a multitude of disagreements, challenges, and judgments of these choices. We must ask of our followers to do leadership in ways that complement our organizational goals and empower them to lead by giving them opportunities to grow and experiment. And yet all of these statements are inadequate to define something as grand and honestly as tired as the concept of leadership. Leadership is building and maintaining trust. It is dynamic, awkward, lonely, exhausting, exhilarating, captivating, risky, setting boundaries, saying sorry, celebrating greatness, holding people accountable, seeing patterns, grasping detail. It's consensual. It can be dictatorial. It can be service, and it can be prestige. It's knowing we can be better and not being afraid to learn in front of others, and knowing where our leadership is needed and when to get out of the way. All of us here are leaders, and we use our leadership capacity to try and make the world a better place, more just, fair, and free. However, we know there are others out there who identify as leaders, and they also try to make the world a better place, believing their goal is a more just, fair, and free world. But we disagree with their tactics or foundational premises or the flag they fly, and we are increasingly finding the divide between us growing, a rift that becomes a chasm that seems unapproachable, much less one that we might cross. Leadership is a tool for navigating this polarity. The law of polarity states that there is an opposite for everything in our world, that it's necessary for balance within our universe. Everything has a duality and a built-in opposite. They cannot exist without the other. Paradoxically, these opposing separate sides are part of the same because together they make up the whole. The polar ends are both extremes of the same continuum. They're just as alike as they are different. In fact, it is often said that love and hate are similar emotions. In another example, let's think of a coin. There are two opposing sides that appear separate, but they're two sides of the same object and they are inseparable. When you might flip a coin and get heads, there's always a potential that you might have gotten tails. There's always a potential for the opposite in a polarity. You cannot have one side of the continuum without the other. If there's a positive, there's a negative. Birth can't have without death. Light you can't have without dark. Happy you can't have without sad. The polarity in our current political climate, in our homes, in our schools, in our communities, in our state, is palpable to all of us. James Baldwin once said that no man is a devil in his own mind. Sometimes when I work with leaders, I like to say that everyone is a Jedi, very few people are Sith. Although I do think the bad guys have better gear, so some people might choose Sith for that reason. But in general, people identify with the good guy when they watch a movie or a TV show. And why is that? Because we want to see ourselves on the side of good. If we think we're on the side of good and the other people on the other side of polarity think they're on the side of good, how do we know how to move forward together since we share this world? Our adversaries are our neighbors, family, colleagues, friends. The divide has been growing. Most studies say that the shift started taking hold in 2000. And as you can see in these graphs, it's only been widening over the years since. When it was written in 2014, 92% of Republicans were more conservative than the median Democrat. And 94% of Democrats were more liberal than the median Republican. It's no wonder we are where we are now. I'm sure if this study was done again, the gap would be even wider. Facebook data from 2017 confirms it, as well as every Thanksgiving dinner in almost every home since. It has had a disastrous impact on our communities and mental health. For people in America, ages 18 to 29, it is reported politics and news media have had negative impacts on their mental health. And back to Facebook, nothing we do seems to make much of a difference. We are in echo chambers of our own design, across a chasm that very few can bridge. Genuine disagreement is often positively necessary for intellectual and emotional development, and disagreement is necessary for democracy to work. Democracy is hard. Having a big tent is hard. Hopefully, it is already painfully clear that canceling and deplatforming people's voices is not the way to stimulate a healthy culture of disagreement. As the ACLU, our belief in the First Amendment extends internally as well as externally. And we do our best to ensure that we are open to the leadership that is required to keep us learning and growing. Change is inevitable, and so is disagreement about that change. Our leadership shows up in how we choose to adapt. And all of our members, all of our supporters who deal with the polarity in our country and our communities every day, you stand strong with your leadership. You listen to your neighbors and colleagues who may not agree with your points of view on many things, and share what you learn and believe even when you're not in the majority. You choose love over all else and strive to keep our big, beautiful tent open, our poles firmly planted in the ground and gusseted against the strong winds we know are coming. When confronted with injustice, inequality, hunger, greed, and indignity, you rise to the occasion and ask your neighbors, what do you need, rather than whose flag do you fly? We have a lot more work to do, and we know that to rip off Game of Thrones, winter is coming. The path our society has been on since we rejected the tyranny of a distant ruler, regardless of the countless other injustices and tyrannies we have afflicted upon one another as part of our American experiment, has always trended towards more tolerance, more acceptance, more freedom, more justice, and embracing the differences that make us a country of multitudes of identities. The great American melting pot has so much more to offer, regardless of how difficult and well polarized our experience of one another has become. We fuel our fights with this knowledge and the belief that, in the end, all people deserve and desire a life free and equal from birth, with access to hope. And even though we all suffer within a system that is imperfect and sometimes dangerous in this regard, that the system, as much as ourselves, can continue to learn and grow past its current limitations. Leadership is an act, a way of being, in the moment, authentic, striving, scared, proud, and self-reflective. We step into our leadership when we know ourselves enough to engage in continuous improvement of how we show up, and humility in where our power and authority are sometimes not enough. We thrive in our leadership when we create the conditions for others to surpass us in our skills and abilities, and when we hold boundaries firm that support our ability to work towards achievable goals. Those of us with positional authority and privilege are responsible to use that power to create the conditions for equity and belonging, and are accountable for how we make decisions and the caliber of those decisions. In the choices we make every day, we are being watched for consistency, honesty, and clarity. And it's a leader's burden to deal with a multitude of disagreements, challenges, and judgment of those choices. We must ask of our followers to do leadership in ways that complement our organizational goals and empower them to lead by giving them opportunities to grow and experiment. Join us, act up for justice, run for office, vote, and continue to listen to one another and grow, because that is what leaders like us do. Thank you for having me, and here's to another fantastic year for the ACLU of Nebraska. In gratitude and partnership always. Thank you.
Thanks, Mitch. Inspiring stuff. And now we are thrilled to recognize this year's honorees. 2022 has been a demanding year, and these leaders have met the challenge with passion, determination, fortitude, and a commitment to ensure that we the people means all of us.
We have multiple winners in 2 categories this year. The winners of this year's Roger Baldwin's Civil Libertarian of the Year Award include our close partners in the Nebraskan for Abortions Access Coalition, IB Black Girl, NEAR, Planned Parenthood, and the Women's Fund of Omaha.
This award honors collaborative work defending Nebraskans' rights and freedoms. Let's turn things over to the honorees.
My name is Erin Feichtinger. I am the Policy Director at the Women's Fund of Omaha, and I'm honored to accept this award on behalf of our organization and in partnership with other awardee organizations. The rights and freedoms you considered secure are no longer, and we're committed to strong advocacy efforts because without control over our own bodies, we are not free. I am thankful for the coalition of partners we work with to protect all Nebraskans' right to make our own decisions about our own healthcare without political interference. We are not just members of organizations, we are members of our communities. And together we are working to create a future where we all have the freedom to control our own bodies, safely care for our families, and live with dignity. The Women's Fund work to create communities where everyone can reach their full potential is in critical danger when women, girls, and pregnant people don't have control over our own bodies. And our movement is growing by the day. All across our state, Nebraskans are advocating for abortion access, and we will continue to be here using our voices loudly and unapologetically to demand a society that sees us as a whole person deserving of equal rights. Thanks again to our partners at the ACLU. We're honored to accept this award.
Hi, my name is Chelsea Souter. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the founder and director of NEAR, also known as Nebraska Abortion Resources. I want to thank you for this award today. We are honored to be part of the Nebraskans for Abortion Access Coalition. And honestly, the success that we have built on our community collective power is because of the folks like you, the folks who show up every day and rally, the folks who show up at the Capitol and testify, the people who get out and canvass and vote and educate folks on what abortion access really looks like for people and why it's so important. And also the storytellers, folks who've had abortions, who are so vulnerable enough and generous enough to share their stories with all of us. So I want to thank you again. I want to give some words of encouragement. You know, we've done a lot of great things in Nebraska, and we've moved the needle slightly, and we have quite a ways to go. But I know with folks like you in the room that we can continue to build that power and continue to make sure that folks in this state have access to bodily autonomy and their rights. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Naomi Thompson, and I am the Policy and Advocacy Manager at IB Black Girl. The team at IB Black Girl is truly humbled and honored to receive this award for our work alongside our partners on reproductive rights in Nebraska. Never in our lifetime did we think or imagine abortion care and access would be in the state that it's in. However, we are committed to ensuring our fundamental rights to access to healthcare, autonomy, and liberation will not be eroded. Thank you, ACLU of Nebraska, for this acknowledgement, and the work continues.
Hi, my name's Adele Burke, and I'm a Senior Manager of Public Affairs with Planned Parenthood Advocates of Nebraska. On behalf of Planned Parenthood and our entire team, I'm so proud to accept the Roger Baldwin Civil Libertarian of the Year Award from the ACLU of Nebraska. This has been an incredibly challenging year for reproductive rights nationally and locally. We saw the U.S. Supreme Court strip away our federal right to access abortion care and our right to control our bodies, our lives, and our futures. Here at the local level, we have extreme politicians who are still hell-bent on blocking and banning abortion here in Nebraska. But I'm proud to say that even in the face of 4 different attempts to ban abortion this year, we have managed to defeat all of them. And today, or more than 4 months after Roe v. Wade was overturned, abortion is still legal here in Nebraska. None of this would have been possible without the extraordinary work of ordinary residents who have lifted up their voices and stood up in support of reproductive rights and abortion access. It also wouldn't have been possible without our incredible coalition partners, including the ACLU of Nebraska. And of course, it wouldn't have been possible without our incredible Planned Parenthood Advocates of Nebraska public affairs team. That includes Cam Neiman, Shaina Barros Santiago, Claire Wiebe, and Andy Curry-Grubb. On behalf of our entire team, and as part of this incredible coalition, we're excited to continue this work together. Thank you.
This year, our Defender of Bill Rights Award goes to the state senators who filibustered and defeated the total abortion ban. They showed great courage and resilience in the face of adversity last session, and we thank them.
We wish we had time for remarks from all of these incredible leaders, but for the sake of time and given their busy schedules, we will instead play some of the debate from this spring. Let's give it a listen.
The right to determine if, when, and under what circumstances a person reproduces is inherent. It's the right to determine where that person's life goes.
I think ultimately it's the decision of a woman, her clergyman, and her doctor.
And that still is, do not think that politicians belong in these decision-making between a doctor and a woman.
I cannot walk in another woman's shoes, but you all gladly can walk in another's shoes.
One of the things I've been thinking about is what it means if it becomes illegal. If abortion becomes illegal in this state, what happens?
For us to knowingly pass a piece of legislation that would put a woman's body and her health care in jeopardy, how cynical can we get?
So to say that doctors shouldn't be worried, or to say that medical providers are provided for, or all sorts of things, not under the bill that's been proposed. It's a complete ban that creates a felony for doctors.
And then everybody gets up and marches like lemmings and says, "Oh no, it's a pro-life bill. Don't worry about it. We'll figure it out on select file. We're going to vote it through though." This is deeply flawed language.
I feel like we're cherry picking our legislation, and I feel that we're endangering women as a result of this.
And no one who supports this bill gets up and answers these questions. You act like our questions aren't real, and they are. These are real problems that are facing real families and real women.
It's extremely disrespectful for a man to get up in front of a room full of women and mothers and tell them how prenatal development works.
It's the patient's health, not politics, that should guide every medical decision.
And finally, it is our great pleasure to give the Robert M. Spire Founder Service Award to our friend and colleague, Yolanda Chavez Nuncio.
Certainly, and it recognizes a lifetime of service, and Yolanda definitely fits that bill. Those who know her best can tell you about the care and the passion that motivate her to make things better in her home community of Grand Island and across the state.
Yolanda, from all your friends on the board and staff, congratulations on this award.
I think I have to blame who I am, where I am, on my mother and my grandmother. My mother had the very, very first Spanish language radio program in the state of Nebraska, clear back in the 50s and 60s. I can remember when we were children, little kids, we would go with my mom and dad and in the car, and we would stay in the car with my dad, and mom would go in and do a Spanish language program. She was the first Latina Mexican woman, Chicana, to work at one of the polls in Grand Island. And so that was bred, the importance of voting, the importance of your rights and your voice were brought up, were taught to us when we were children. We always believed she was involved in the community. I remember her also going and translating and interpreting for the police department. This was 70 years ago. So the need was there, and so she would do it. She volunteered for the police department and for the hospitals when we were kids. And I remember that all very well. Those were my models, and that's how we got started. So, and then I think the other big factor in my life was that I became a VISTA volunteer. Many, many, many opportunities. I marched with Cesar Chavez. I met Cesar Chavez, and I was connected with other organizations in the state, participated in activities with the Brown Berets. And so we were involved with the first Poor People's Conference, with the Oregon Poor People's Conference, and then with the National Poor People's Campaign. So I grew and learned so much while I was up there that just really then developed me into who I am. In Grand Island, we have the free lunch program, and we have the free breakfast program. And I can remember when I came back to Grand Island, I became involved from living in Oregon. I became involved with the community in different programs, and I went to work with a lady by the name of Miriam Ramirez, and she organized us, and we organized the community to start a free lunch program. And this was back in the 70s or 80s, I don't remember for sure. But, we started with a small group and of community people. And then we ended up going to school board meetings. And all we really wanted at that point was for children to have the opportunity to have lunch at school, not have to worry about eating and not being hungry when they're at school. Now we have both the free lunch and the free breakfast program, and it's 50, 60 years later. We didn't think about the longevity of it, and the sustainability of that program. We were thinking about kids going to school hungry, and how could we help alleviate that, alleviate their hunger. And here we are 60 years later, and it's still going, it's still serving children. There's just been a lot. When I see the number of people now, we have an election coming up, and I look back to my mom being the first Latina poll worker, and then I've been now working at the polls for years, but now we have more bilingual people and people of color working at the polls. And, that has taken a long time to reach that point where people can feel comfortable going into many of the sites in Grand Island, knowing that there's going to be somebody there that can help them understand the voting process and understand that ballot, and knowing that they're going to have that right to vote. They have that right to vote, and they're going to be able to use that right to vote. It's really important that members of the community become involved in what's going on in their communities and decide how they can make a change in that community, how they can make the community better for everyone. And the only way to really do that is to become involved, and to become involved with activities and organizations and positions that are leadership positions and decision makers. I'm very proud to be able to say that I'm a part of ACLU, because I believe that the things that ACLU stands up for and defends are things that are important to all of us, whether it be the issues around the jails, the issue with the police brutality, immigration, everything that ACLU defends is important to all of us, the LGBTQ community, everything, because we're all subject to discrimination or to being treated unfairly for one reason or another. Maybe because I'm brown, or it may be because I don't speak English, or maybe because I'm gay, or whatever the reason might be, or maybe because I've committed crimes and paid my time, and yet I'm not given the opportunity to be who I could be. All of those things don't change who we are as people, and don't change the fact that we are entitled to what we deserve. And I appreciate that ACLU stands up for people in all those situations and more.
Thank you all for joining us. We depend on you. It's a team effort, and we definitely want to congratulate the recipients of the awards. There's so many people that deserve it, and those we chose definitely have motivated us all and inspired us all.
We are so grateful for your passion and your dedication and your commitment to making sure Nebraska is a place where we all belong. Don't forget to vote.
Don't forget to vote. So Asante, thank you. Please join us again next year, and in between time, we keep fighting.